Hello and welcome to TNWKS, the Now We Know show, the show where we discuss a topic of interest and by the end we will have learnt something new and hopefully you will too. I'm Zak.
I'm Buzz and we've got back in the studio Sarah Downing.
Hello again.
And she's going to be telling us all about the creative process of writing a book and getting it published.
How exciting. If you enjoy the Now We Know Show podcast, support Zak Wylde Productions on Patreon or join our members on YouTube for early access, ad-free content and exclusive episodes. So, before we get into the weird and wonderful world of books, it's time for...
Weird and Wonderful!
So this time I have brought in the story, and the story is... Man builds Eiffel Tower model with 700,000 matchsticks over 8 years only to have the world record rejected.
Oh, I think I'd be a little bit... disappointed if that was me.
The model maker says Guinness World Records rejected his efforts without even looking at his 23.6 feet model, stating 2 reasons for its decision.
Oh, 2 reasons. Why do you think, Sarah, that his Eiffel Tower may have been disqualified before even being seen?
Because, I mean, it is quite a feat, and I've seen a picture.
Yeah.
It does look rather
I was
impressive.
going to say, was it not accurate?
Well, okay, it's interesting. It might not be for the reasons you think.
Okay.
So, he said it was because the structure must be built from matches that are available for public purchase and don't have red flammable tips. They must also not be cut, disassembled or deformed to the point where they are no longer recognised as matches.
Oh, you mean to... would half a match?
That would be deformed, so it's not a match anymore,
Oh.
apparently.
Okay. How'd you... Oh, there
That
you
seems extremely nitpicky.
go. Yeah.
Like you have to light the matches and then blow them out?
Yes.
To prove it.
So
To prove they're actual matches rather
Yeah,
than
but
the
that's-
ones you can just
That is...
I was going
craft
to,
matches.
yeah, can you get craft matches? That's a bit bizarre, really, because when you consider safety matches, obviously are not the red tips, and they don't want you to not have. They don't want you to have the red tips, but you don't have the tip on it when you make it. As you say, Sarah, you usually either scrape the tip off or
So
you light it.
what
and
that
then blow
says
it
to
out.
me is a match is only a match when it looks like a match.
That's not.
And it doesn't have... It
It's
can't
only,
be like...
it's only a safety match.
It has to be the modern match, not like a old match, if that makes sense.
Is there a difference?
Well, you said the old match has like the you
Oh.
can flick it.
Oh,
and
you're
stuff.
talking about the non-safety matches.
Yes.
Yes.
That's what I mean.
Well, there you go.
That's
Oh,
kind of
that's
kind
pretty
of
mean.
sad.
That's
Yeah.
really mean. So what on earth is he going to do with this 24-foot replica of the Eiffel Tower?
Sacrificial bird.
Burning.
I was going to say, if
Oh.
he used the matches with the red tips and the red tips are still on there, fine. You know,
This is what
one
I
mistake and it all
This is
goes
what
up
I
in
think of your
flames.
world record
8 years of my life in
I have
this.
spent on this.
Ah!
That must be excruciating to go through something like that.
Oh, yeah. I suppose it... Okay, for the listeners out there, if you're going to build something out of matches,
Check.
check the specifications first of what classifies as
Yeah, because
The-
I do know
the
that
accepted match.
the Guinness World Records can be very pernickety when it comes to like technical specs on things.
Okay.
Like when it comes to like Dalek collections and things,
Mhm.
and there is a world record for that,
Okay.
which I'm trying to do. The thing that I don't necessarily agree with is the fact that every single Dalek has to be different.
Has to be different. So
Yes.
different colour,
Yes,
different shape.
and like they don't even. You have to like make a million custom ones.
You're going to have to mess
It's very
about.
strange. It's very strange how they kind of
How bizarre. But mind you, it also has to have the
recognise these
exact
things.
amount of balls on it as well.
That is
doesn't
quite
it?
funny. So
Domes.
the paradigm Daleks that was Matt Smith, like the
Yeah.
ones that are very multicoloured,
Yeah.
they're not officially Daleks because they don't have enough
Balls.
balls.
They're short on balls.
They're short on balls to be official Daleks.
Oh dear. There you go.
And there we have it.
Yeah, well, that's your weird and wonderful then.
Pretty
Right.
weird and pretty
Okay,
sad. At the same time.
anyway, hey, we got Sarah. Hiya, Sarah.
Hiya.
Right, we are in the studio and we are talking about writing.
Yes.
Okay, and about the process, that process of creativity. They say that everybody has a book inside them, and I kind of agree with that. But I don't necessarily think it's necessarily a good book always. You know, there are
What are you
people.
trying to say, Buzz?
There are people that say that there are some people who haven't got the capacity of writing a book. But everybody's got a story. But I suppose the thing is, it's how you go about putting it down on paper.
That's the challenge.
Whether it's fictional, whether it's
non-fiction,
whatever. I mean, it could be a book which is about the sciences or a biography or something. So take us through the process, because Sarah, you are an author.
Yes.
And you have written not one, but quite a lot of books.
4 published books to this.
Yeah,
at this
and
point.
working on the 5th one at the moment.
Exactly.
Wow.
So a very, in our opinion, a very successful author. And I've read your first set of books, and they were fascinating. So take us away.
Okay. Well, like with the Eiffel Tower thing, first thing to do is research. So depending on your audience and the genre you're planning to write in, will affect sort of the word length you're going to be aiming for. Adult novels are usually sort of 60 to 100,000 words, which sounds really daunting, but it's not too bad. The sort of young adult books are sort of 50,000 to 90,000 words, and then novellas, so short stories, are between 17,500 and 40,000 words, and then like a short story for an anthology is like 10,000 words, which very short. I'm not very good at short stories. There's just not enough room to fit everything in.
Well, it could be short, or you could make it longer.
Yeah.
Or what if I add this bit? What if I add this bit?
Yeah.
That must be. I mean, again, I remember being. This is years ago, being back at school, and there was an author came round, and this would have been primary school even. This is lower school if you're a two school tier system, but I can't remember the author's name. He did books about. I think it was Billy Bunter. Character called Billy Bunter.
I can't say I've ever heard of Billy Bunter.
No, I haven't.
And anyway, the point was that even these years later, I remember this visit from this author because it made an impression. And back then, he said, when you're writing a story, you've got to have a start, a middle, and an end in order to construct that story.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I thought, well, actually, that's probably, and that bit of advice has stuck with me.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So, what gives you an inspiration? I mean, first of all, maybe you should give us a little background on yourself, Sarah. What type of books do you write?
The first 4 are sort of sword and sorcery fantasy books.
Oh, we do like a
Awesome.
bit of sword and sorcery.
We do.
Well, the first book I started writing because I was working away. I was in a hotel by myself for at least a month, run out of stuff to read, and couldn't be.
Then
I hate reality TV. It's like
Then
right.
it hit you.
Well, I'd read a book, someone else had self-published, and absolutely nothing happened in the middle.
Right.
And I thought, I can do better than this. And I thought, well, money where your mouth is.
Let's do it.
Boom.
Yeah, so
What an inspiration.
wrote the first one, and then my sister turned around to me and went, well, no, you finished it, you better do something with it. So I had to go at self-publishing.
Okay, you can take us through that process
Yes.
in a short while.
So did you want to tell us the titles of your books?
Yeah, go on, give it a plug.
Go on.
Okay, so the series is called wulfharan series, and then the 4 books are Bound, Weft of Crimson, Wolf in Shadow, and Blood Song.
And we actually have them here in the studio.
As a form of reference.
Yeah, that's a form of reference.
Not that the listeners can see, unless they're seeing like pictures.
So this is a complete book, all following one after another.
Yes,
in
yes,
the same
it's
characters
quartet,
in the
yes.
book. And where would the listeners be able to purchase these?
They're available through most sort of bookshops and online. They're in paperback, Kindle. The first one is available as an audiobook as well.
Oh, right.
I've got the second one to edit as an audiobook.
Wow.
Which
Maybe you can take us again. We talk about the process of doing that, because that's a different thing altogether, isn't it?
yes, yeah. One of my friends studied drama at uni, so he narrated it all for me. Which there's about 10 hours of recording, so that's going to be about 50 hours of editing, because they say roughly about 5 hours per hour. So it's finding the 50 hours whilst I'm finishing writing the next book. So it's all on the
Time management there.
So
yes, it's all on the to-do list.
what platforms is the audiobook on if people want to download it?
It's on Audible, Spotify. Can't remember where else, because I publish it through a couple of different platforms.
Okay.
So one is Audible, and then the other one is a company called Find Away Voices, and they send it out to library catalogues and things, so you can download it through libraries. And just search the title.
Right, so you want to be looking for Bound by Sarah Downing.
Yes, and I can put links in the description of this video if you're listening on YouTube.
Yes, it's definitely up on Spotify as well. And sort of,
Awesome. So you're there, the process of writing.
Yes.
What advice would you give?
First one, don't be tempted to use your thesaurus. When you're writing, it's really easy to go, I'm sure I can find a better word for that, and use your thesaurus, and then your readers, every other, they're constantly having to look up words.
Oh, because they don't understand.
Yeah, because most books have an 8th level reading level. Under the proofreading on Word, you need to turn the function on, but when you do spell check, it'll give you your readability of your document. So if it's higher than 8, you need to look at your word choices, your paragraph lengths.
Oh, right. So this is something I've never heard of before.
Yeah.
Well, again, so even from when you literally are going to start, I doubt people write books literally by getting a pen and paper and physically handwriting the book. And in the old days, you always see like movies and things where authors are sitting at a typewriter. But of course, things have completely changed these days, because you've gone from typewriters. And when I started business, I had an electric typewriter, word processor thing, which was like, wow, this is amazing. But of course, now we just have our laptops, or even our telephones have documents and stuff that you can type on.
Yeah.
And you've just said something that I had never considered. So you've got things that you can actually utilise within these software programs that are going to help you.
Yes. Words will do sort of dictation. So you can dictate your book and it'll type it. There's other programs that will do that.
Is that something you find useful? Do you make kind of audio? If you suddenly have an idea, so if you're thinking, I've got an idea, do you write that down? Do you suddenly pop your phone out and record a little audio memo to yourself?
I usually make a note of it and then don't refer back to it. Because I've always got the story in the back of my mind, whatever I'm doing, and it's like, oh, I could do that. And then I make a note of it, sit down in front of the computer, and it doesn't actually tie in with what I've actually written.
Right.
It's interesting to see how that idea develops and changes, and can you bring that idea back into the story, or do you just basically sidetrack ideas like that?
Probably a bit of sidetrack. I mean, I do plot the story out beforehand.
Good choice.
In the various genres, there are certain scenes you need to have. There's a really good book called The Anatomy of Genre by John Truby. He goes through all those key points for the detective, crime thrillers, romances, you name it, it's in there. And if you're mixing genres, you need to have the points for both of those genres.
Ooh, that's really interesting.
So
I must check this book out.
It makes it easier in some ways because you need to hit. So if it's romance, they usually end up breaking up for some reason, and then they realise they've made a mistake and they get back together.
You've just literally quoted every Christmas romance film.
Exactly.
And it turns out love was in front of her all the time.
Oh no, she's been offered a job in New York and she's going to have to leave.
That scene usually takes place about 2/3 to a quarter of the way through the book.
Mm-hmm.
So where that scene's got to come, and then so it helps sort of plot out where the story's going. If you get stuck, write those scenes and then fill in between. I've certainly with the one I'm doing at the moment, I write the first sort of quarter of the book, so 25,000 words, which is so as you said, books are split into beginning, middle, end.
Mm-hmm.
The middle is always twice the size of the beginning and the end. So you've got 25,000 words for your beginning, 50,000 words for the middle, 25,000 for the end.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I do feel I read a book recently which was kind of post-apocalyptic. I'm not going to mention it because it was actually a really good book. I enjoyed it. Apart from that was the thing. The beginning took a while. It
Yes.
felt like a much longer part of it. Then the middle did seem shorter, and then when it got to an end, it was a bit of real sort of lame duck ending. That's why I don't want to mention the book. But it's a real shame because I really enjoyed the book. But yeah, the ending just rolled off too quick.
Yes.
And it was kind of, I felt that the author in this instance didn't quite know how to finish the story, you know, and that's yeah. So I think that in itself is going to be hard because you've got the start and you've got to build your characters and introduce them to the readers, and then get the journey through probably the middle of the book of whatever that journey happens to be, and then to resolve everything or leave it on a cliffhanger, I don't know, at the end. That's probably got to be the hardest part, I would imagine.
Yeah, it can be just sort of making sure you've wrapped
to be
up all
happy
the
to say that
storylines.
I am happy with where I'm finishing it now.
Yes. Like I say, the book that I'm writing at the moment, I've written the beginning and I'm working on the ending.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got a few scenes for that, and then I'm actually writing backwards.
Okay.
So that
Can you give us any insight in this book? I mean, this is
it's a vampire, it's an urban fantasy.
Ooh.
I'll try not to give away
no,
too many spoilers.
No, that's a fantasy vampires. What more do you want to need?
So
I'm already sold.
The main premise is that woman comes home. She lives with her family, and her mum, dad, and brother have all been murdered by vampires while she's out.
Dun, dun, dun.
And she teams up with a vampire to solve the deaths, but she doesn't actually realise he's a vampire.
Okay, I think you've given us enough
Yes,
there.
so,
That's leave us on the edge there, Sarah.
Yes, so the deaths are linked to secrets in his past.
Right.
So I've got to try and fit all of those in, and to make sure that
You address all the different
clues are
points,
there. I'm working on the ending and working backwards, and then if I need to add in a point, if it's not covered, I can sort of edit through it's called reverse plotting, but I don't really reverse plot because I reverse write.
That's really interesting, thinking about all the different kind of ways you can do a story like that.
Yeah.
Whereas at the moment, I'm kind of toying with an idea of writing a novel, and I'm basically a couple of thousand words in, and I'm basically just starting at the beginning and just seeing where it goes to kind of flesh out a plot for an audio drama that I did write. It's going to be interesting to kind of see if I'm going to jump to later on, write some of that, and then maybe go back, see what happens.
Yes, yeah. Like I say, if you're struggling, start with the scenes that you've got in your head, the scenes you really want to write.
When you have an idea for a story, Sarah, does it kind of all come to you in a rush? Do you suddenly got to get this? The thought process is a lot faster than verbally explaining a story.
Yeah.
So do you kind of get this, you know where it's going to start, and even to the point of you know where it's going to end, and you in your head you kind of got this micro condensed story, and then is that how it works for you? Or do you just think, I've got an idea for a story, I'm going to see where it takes me?
A bit of both, really. Like I say, I'll have an idea and I'll plot it out, and then once I start writing, it evolves and it just ends up flowing in a different direction.
Exactly.
It sounds daft, but I've noticed that if the characters don't want to do something, I will get writer's block.
Right.
And I'll be trying to force the story in one direction, and I just, writer's block, can't write anything. It's going really slowly, a couple hundred words a day, and I'm like, what's wrong? And I'll look at it, and as soon as I have a think about it, go, actually, maybe if they do this instead, and the story will just flow.
It starts flowing. Right?
And so
You make it sound as if the characters have taken control of your story themselves.
They're in charge.
yeah, a lot of authors do say that the characters take over. It is true in some ways. I think because they're running around in the back of my head.
There's a story that I recall about Robert E. Howard, who obviously is most famous for writing the character Conan. But supposedly when he was writing the stories of Conan, he felt that Conan was literally standing behind him, overseeing what he was writing, and so he had to get it right. Otherwise, Conan wouldn't be happy with him. How true that is, I don't know, but that's kind of what you just explained. It sounded like what you were.
Yeah, it was very, very similar, and I've read a lot of authors saying similar things, and I was thinking that sounds a bit weird, and then it happens.
So you have a vampire looking over your shoulder at the moment when you're at your doings. I don't know.
Doing the doing.
Doing the doings on your computer.
Yeah. But yeah, going back to what you were saying about the book you read that was a slow start, they actually, one of the main things people say is start at the beginning of the story. So start where the action starts. I downloaded a sample of a book the other day, and it literally, I assume it was the main character, but it started with the conception of the character, their birth, and then it went, the first chapter started with what I assume is the mentor turning up, and I'm like, okay, I'm bored now.
Yeah, I find it very difficult sometimes. I'm a great bookworm, and if I have a book that just doesn't grab me within maybe the first 2 chapters, then it can be hard going.
Yes, yeah, your first chapter has to grab your audience, and your first sentence as well. It's called the hook, because you're supposed to hook your characters in.
I'm assuming that kind of book writing skills maybe have changed over the centuries, because the reason I say that is because recently I read Robinson Crusoe, which is a book you'd think that I probably would have read years ago, but I've never got round to reading it, even though I know Robinson Crusoe and the story format and everything, and you've got umpteen TV shows and movies of Robinson Crusoe and variations on the theme. And eventually I thought, do you know, I've left it long enough, I'm going to read Robinson Crusoe. And it was an absolute push to even get through that book, because it was so boring. It was like, I literally got that point where a third in, I said, I've started this now. I am going to finish it. And then when I'm like 2/3 through, I'm thinking, God, I've got to finish this book, because I have invested so much time in this book now, and it is so boring. And then it got to the end, and literally in the last chapter, it had an exciting bit in it that actually was like, I wish I'd read that first, because that was about the only interesting bit in the whole book.
Certainly how...
Be warned if you've never read Robinson Crusoe.
Certainly how books are written have changed. The main reason is because of television.
Is it attention span? Is it people that...
I think it's part attention span, and with TV these days, there's just so many channels and so many things to watch. If it doesn't catch your attention immediately, you turn over, and it's kind of spread into books as well.
That's a shame in a way. I kind of like, because I think that has been the downfall of TV in recent years. That they... Okay, I'm going to put it on the line. We're Doctor Who fans. Yeah. Okay, and if you watched Classic Who, just to put it into some kind of simple perspective, Classic Who, you used to get mainly 4-part stories. So you'd watch a story over 4 weeks, each one leaving a cliffhanger to the next one. And then when they started the new Who, as we call it,
from 2005,
it's literally 1 episode is 1 story.
That's it.
And I believe they did that because they wanted to go for more of the international market, especially the US, where they were used to TV programs such as Star Trek, where they do exactly that: 1 story in 1 episode, maybe spread it over 2 episodes. There's probably the odd variation to that, but mainly it's you capture your audience, 1 episode, 1 story, and they've developed the attention span that's all they want. They don't want to have to wait. And moving on from that, watching a program like Classic Who, which is 4 episodes, you would watch it, hit the cliffhanger, and literally have to wait a week before you see the next one.
Yeah, you couldn't binge watch it on the iPlayer.
People are like, they're so into this binge watching that it gets to the point, I've seen posts on social media where they say, I am refusing to even watch this series until the whole of them have run, so I can then binge watch it. And I'm kind of feeling that's kind of sounding like it's happened with books as well, that if it's not a quick... if people aren't satisfied by a book maybe faster, they go, I'm not reading that. Because I'm sure, I don't know, has people's attention spans gone down? And what about people actually reading books? Have you got any kind of statistics on that, where people would read a lot? Now it's very hard to get maybe youngsters to read books, because all they want to do is the quick fix. Read something on their phone. It's probably where the problem they have in this day and age with news and things. They'll get a little, headline or something, and they'll just take that and maybe the first paragraph of a news thing as being the news,
Yeah.
and don't look into it anymore because they haven't got the attention span.
Yeah.
Because they're saying that a lot of people to get their news from social media off their phones now because they don't bother watching TV news bulletins, broadcasts and things. So with books, are people still reading lots of books, or do you think that's gone down?
I know Kindle sales are increasing. A lot of people swapping over to digital media.
Oh, that's interesting as well.
There are websites like Wattpad where people can self-publish stories, and you literally write a chapter, and people can see the book as you're writing it.
Oh gosh.
Which
Gosh.
I'm not tried because I'm thinking, well, what happens if you need to go back
Yeah, I
and
was going to
change
say, what if you...
Yeah.
stuff?
Otherwise, it's like final.
Yeah, if you're just, they're not going to want to read every rewrite, and it's like, well, yeah, I'm not quite sure unless you've pre-written it and then only posting it one chapter at a time. But I don't know.
See, that's interesting because I know you are a Kindle fan. You love your
Mostly
Kindle.
because I've run out of room for books in my bedroom. They're stacking up on the floor.
You gave us an interesting statistic before we came in the studio, actually, about libraries.
Yes, the definition of a library is a minimum of 1,000 books.
Right.
Which I've got that in my room and on my Kindle.
Yeah. Well, there you go. It's good to know that we have a library.
You've
as
actually
well.
got 2 libraries.
Yes, yeah. And I'm a massive bookworm. If you're going to write, you need to be a reader.
Again, maybe it's a social sort of comment, but do you ever go into houses, friends' houses or somebody's house? Yeah, where you've been invited, obviously. You're not just broken in.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, come check your books out.
Just go into a house, and then because I get this kind of weird kind of feeling. I go into a house, and if it's one of them ones that completely, devoid of books anywhere, you sort of look round and there's no books on the shelf, no books anywhere. I kind of find that's odd, because I'm so used to having books. I have a revolving Edwardian bookcase right next to my chair, that I can spin round and grab a book out and read it, and it's like to go into homes sometimes where there is no evidence that a book exists. I find that odd. But then again, maybe I'm being odd because perhaps they all own Kindles and all their books are on Kindle, and that's why I can't see them. I don't know. But I love to see physical books.
Yes,
And plus to the physical books, you don't have to charge them.
You don't have to charge them.
Yes, but it's a nightmare trying to fit that many books in your suitcase. I went away on holiday with my folks, and I literally read 12 books in 2 weeks.
Well, there you
I
go.
ran out of books I'd taken with me, and I was reading the ones in the villa, some military thrillers, which really aren't my thing, but it was a
But
book,
you
and
read
it
them.
was sat there. I mean, I've got bored once and started reading the Yellow Pages, so...
Showing your age now, they don't have that. Or do they still have Yellow Pages? I've no idea. I don't
Probably
think
a
they
lot
do.
more.
It's online now, isn't it?
Yes, but yeah, if it's got writing on it and I've got nothing else to do, I will sit and read it. Yeah, like I say, major bookworm.
Yeah, well, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
No, but yeah,
That is, I find that a commendable attribute when somebody is so into reading books, because as I've always said, if you read, you live 1,000 lifetimes.
Yeah.
If you don't read, you only live one.
Yes,
And
How profound.
well, it is,
Well
but
done.
it's the truth. You could go on so many adventures, whether it be a fictional book or whether it be it might be something that a factual book about the world, nature, whatever, and you're learning all these things, or you're going on a fictional adventure or a crime story, a fantasy, whatever. Every book you read takes you on a new adventure. But if you just don't read anything, not only are you not consuming very interesting facts that you might otherwise, miss out on knowing, but you're missing out on so much. just That's why I love books, because they're just like you can disappear into that world. Yeah.
For as long as you want.
Yeah, and it's great fun, unless it's Robinson Crusoe.
Deliberate stab right there.
Yeah, oh God, no, never again.
Yeah, my mum actually accuses me of actually trying to physically get in the book because I'm short-sighted. I take my glasses off to read, and then the pages are like inches from my nose. So
Dive in there.
literally trying to find.
I'm just getting
If I hit it against my face hard enough, maybe I will.
You want one of those sort of like film montages now of you where you've dived into the book and you're swimming through the words.
The pages.
The pages are unfolding, you know. And there's Sarah swimming through a fantasy
How
book.
abstract.
Exactly.
I mean, yeah, along similar line, I don't know how people read to fall asleep because
I can't do that. Reading last thing at night is impossible because my eyes won't stay open.
for me, you always seem to reach the good bit just as you're thinking about putting the book down, and the next thing I know, it's 6 a.m.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I've had the dawn chorus more than once because I've been sat up reading.
But that is the thing with the book, because if you find that you're reading an engaging book, you get to the end of a chapter and then it's hard not to. You don't want to put it down because I'm just going to read the next chapter to see what happens.
Yes, which is a sign of a
good
book
book
because it's supposed to draw
Yeah,
you through it.
I understand when reading a book for the first time, you've got a series of books here. So I remember when I read the first book, obviously I'm being introduced to the characters, introduced to the world building that you've made. You've created this whole, empire. So when I get to the second book, I'm familiar with the main characters, so I kind of already know where I am with it, and then there's new characters introduced, new places to visit within it. So with any book that you read for the first time, you're going to have that kind of, I've got to get through the first few chapters just to get that taste for it.
Yeah.
But as you say, if you haven't captured the reader by then you may well find they just shut the book. There you go. So we've got our basic advice of know what you want to write,
Yeah.
Have your start, middle and end, and then fill in the gaps.
Yeah, and do all your research beforehand. I mean, if you come across something that you think, actually, I want to add that in, you can go off and do research. But if you do the research straight away, you're at higher risk of doing something called info dumping, where you just put all your research
into the book,
and it slows the story down. So you need to sort of drip feed.
Right. So talking about, for example, the one you're writing at the moment, and don't give anything away, but you're writing one that's obviously based on vampires. When you say research, do you go and research vampire folklore, for example, and to incorporate that, or even take from sort of movie folklore, which is, a lot of that stuff isn't actually like based on folklore, but whatever that research is that what you then, because people love vampires, for example, so they kind of expect certain vampire tropes maybe to be in there, or maybe have something completely new,
or addressed even.
Yes.
or something addressed.
I did read sort of books on sort of vampires and
so
folklore.
that's what you would say your research.
And picked out sort of the things that I wanted. So in the original folklore, vampires could do magic. Interestingly, in the original Dracula, Dracula could actually go out in daylight. The whole vampires combusting if they're hit by someone was to do with the first Dracula movie. They brought it in as a special effect. They wanted to try it out, sort of the whole sort of going up in a cloud of smoke, which is where that comes from. The only thing about going out in daylight was it limited, so Dracula couldn't shape change. Whatever form he was in at sunrise was the one he was in till sunset.
Right. It weakened his powers.
Yes. So in my books, vampires can do magic. I've looked into animal anatomy as well, so they've got the dentition of vampire bats, which, again, Hollywood vampires have got the long canines, where with vampire bats it's actually the incisors they use for puncturing the skin, and the canines are actually used for shearing the fur and the feathers of their prey. So
they lap up the blood as it comes out, don't they?
Yeah. So
I'm getting a man. Imagine a vampire, they go sound effects.
ASMR again.
So
stop licking me, get off.
I'm not licking you. Stop it.
They've got anticoagulants in the saliva of vampire bats, so vampires have that as well. And my vampires also have subdermal armour, which so it lowers their body temperature.
Okay, don't tell us any more of that.
So,
you're enjoying your story and you want to share.
So that, I actually researched armadillos.
Right, okay, because they have obviously external body armour.
Yes, which
Armadillo!
yes, I read
Precisely.
an article. Someone tried to shoot an armadillo and almost killed themselves because of
Ricocheted.
ricocheted and almost hit them.
Who would want to
so-
shoot an armadillo?
That's mean.
That's really mean. We love armadillos.
Yeah, they're fun.
You know.
So,
Yeah, but that's
so-
that's
yeah,
exactly
so-
it. You're summing up the point that I wanted to cover, which
Yes.
was that's what you do when you talk about research. You know,
yes,
just to find the information.
yeah, and sort of little things for the world building as well. The whole idea that got me sort of started on this book was I'd read literally a paragraph in a book, I can't remember what it was now, that said Winston Churchill was a druid. I know there were practicing witches that supposedly did spells to protect England from German invasion during the war. And I was thinking, oh, vampires, magic, sort of super soldiers.
Okay,
sort of
okay.
stories. Yeah,
Don't
and
go
all
on it.
of that all sort of went in.
Went
and,
in. So
and then, yeah, I was going to set it in 1940s, try a historical setting, and it's ended up modern day. So, yeah, it's everything changes. So you sort of sit down with an idea and it.
So at this point, maybe we should move on to how does a book get from like being written
yeah,
to
so you-
being published?
yeah, that's good. You've got your whole.
Yeah.
Where is that step that suddenly it
Right,
becomes
you've put the
like
end.
a real publishable book?
Yeah, so you've got, it's in a Word document,
Yeah.
and it's got the end written on it.
Yeah.
Now we're going to go physical with this.
Yeah. First thing to do, as soon as you've finished it, go back and edit. There's a really good book. It's called Self-Editing for Self-Publishers by Richard Bradburn. And yeah, it gives you an idea. So look at your adjectives, the whole showing, don't tell. So, you know, rather than saying, oh, I had a phone call, if you can show the telephone conversation, just put that in. The interesting thing with any dialogue in a book, it's your characters can't just have a random sort of conversation, you know, bumping into neighbours, you know, discussion about holiday. If it doesn't move the story forward, it shouldn't be in there.
Right. Okay.
So, yeah, idea of, you know, how to do that. BBC Scripts, they have a script library of sort of a lot of their TV shows and movies, which will give you a good idea sort of how dialogue should work in a book, because it's the same as in films. Yeah, so go through, edit it, make sure you hit all those key points that you need to for your genre, and you probably want to do at least a couple of edits, and then you need to send it to a professional editor.
Right. Okay.
Even if you think you've got everything.
So how do you go about finding an editor?
There is a Chartered Institute of Proofreaders and Editors.
Right.
They have editors all over the country. They're all freelance.
So I'm assuming there's a fee involved in this.
Yes, it is well worth the money. With my first book, when I published it, I sort of self-edited and put it up for sale. I did sort of print on demand rather than vanity, because vanity is an upfront cost, and the editing, they don't seem to do a lot of editing, and you end up with a box full of books, and then it's up to you to sell them. Whereas print on demand, sort of, you know, you don't have big piles of books sat around in your house. Yes, the first book, I wasn't sure how it was going to do, so like I say, I put it up for sale. I had probably 300 downloads in the first month,
Right.
which a lot more than I thought I would ever sell. So I thought, okay, so I then took it to an editor, got it properly edited, because that was one of the feedbacks I got from readers saying, you know, it needs proper editing. And I also paid for cover art.
Okay.
So if you're going to spend money to publish a book, spend it on your editing and cover art. You can do your own cover art. There are programs you can use. But what I would suggest is look at published books in the genre you want to publish in.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can, pick a book, find the images, because they usually say where they've got the images from the cover, and try and mock up the cover yourself. so that you know how to combine those elements and you end up with something professional
Yeah, I was
looking.
going to say that in itself must be a very, very important part of a book, because that's what captures your eye to
Well,
that
that's
book.
what they say. They never read a book by its cover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say that
But
again.
it is what grabs you.
Yes.
I do like a lot of science fiction, and I've read so many sci-fi books over the years, and I can honestly say that I have chosen sci-fi books in the past because I've been particularly taken by the cover, only to find the book has actually been very disappointing.
Or
And
even
hence
the
where
reverse.
hence where the story, what you just said, never judge a book by its cover. Sometimes the covers have been very enticing, but the content hasn't been great. So, but it is very important. Equally, as much you don't want a boring book cover.
Of course.
You know,
And
so-
your book cover needs to match what your book's about as
yeah.
well.
Well, that's what I was going to say, because the book, I can't remember the title of it, but I just remember this particular book, and it had a fantastic cover art, this really nice kind of 1950s style sci-fi artwork, and it didn't have anything to do with the story inside. And that's exactly what you just said,
Yeah.
and it's like, that was disappointing, because how is this? I finished the book and it's like, why has it got this cover art?
Yes, because the people that do the cover art don't read the books. They ask you what the book's about.
Right.
And yeah, so yeah,
It's
if you're
important.
expecting someone to sort of go, okay, we're going to do a cover based on this scene, it's not going to happen. Yeah, cover art is one of the things.
Okay, so let's go through this for the listeners. You've got your book. You make sure you've self-edit it, or then perhaps best recommended pay to have it professionally edited.
Yes.
Work out your cover art
Yeah.
to go with the book. So it's now at the position where you have your cover art finalised, you have your final edit. Then what do you do?
So then you need to format it.
Right.
So paperback formatting is different to a Kindle formatting.
Okay.
There are websites that will do it for you. You just upload like a PDF version of your book, and it will put it all in the right format, or even the Word document. With the typesetting for, even the paperbacks, if it's done by computer, it's not always properly typeset. There's loads of YouTube videos on how to typeset a book, how to lay it out for book formatting in Word. Word is not designed for that. Word is literally the replacement for a typewriter.
Yeah, it's a word processor.
So if you justify the text so it's lined up square with the left and the right margins, you end up with big gaps between words, and it looks awful. And you'll see self-published books where they've done that.
Right.
And there are open source softwares for typesetting. Scribus is the one I use. So with the computer typesetting ones, where it's all done, I imagine, by AI, you still get things. So there are 3 things to avoid in typesetting: stacking, where you have the same word above.
Okay.
So you've got, like, say, the word "the" on one line, and you've got the word "the" exactly lined up underneath. Problem with that is you can skip lines because your eye automatically jumps from one to the other. So you need to avoid stacking. And then widows and orphans, so you start a paragraph, so the first bit of the paragraph is on the bottom of the page, and then it carries on.
Right.
So where you've got just like one line.
One line has been cut off.
Yeah, on the previous page. You need to avoid that.
Widows and orphans.
Yeah. So
Getting all the tidbits of
This
information
is
in.
this is very insightful.
It
I've got to
is,
say,
it is.
I would never have considered all this in-depth stuff. I mean, could that be enough to maybe somebody listening now who thinks, "Oh, I want to write a book. I'm all enthusiastic." And oh dearie me, if I could go through all that, I mean, is it a case that if you just say, "Here's my final document," can you give it to somebody, but that's going to cost you?
there are people that will do it. I imagine that there's a website called Fiverr where you literally pay $5 and somebody will do like cover art for you. I imagine there's typesetters and things people on there as well. It is fairly easy to learn. I have taught myself.
There you go.
I've actually got a tutorial on how to typeset on my website. So
Would you
I'll
want to
walk
plug your
through.
website at this point? Because anybody who listens to this is going to
Yes.
need this help.
So it's sarahdowningblog.wordpress.com. So
Say that again.
sarahdowningblog.wordpress.com.
Okay.
I'll put a link somewhere.
Yeah, so I've got literally a step-by-step on how to
Oh, that's very handy.
typeset in Scribus on there. Like I say, there are websites like Readsy where you can just upload your book and it'll do all that for you. So it'll send you back a PDF. It only takes a few minutes. But like I say, it doesn't avoid the stacking
or
and
the
the widows and orphans, which to me, it doesn't quite look as professional as it could be.
do.
But they do nice layouts, so it depends what you're looking for. The other thing I found out the other day is apparently all new chapters are supposed to start on the right-hand page of the book, which I didn't know. So.
Well, that's
there you
a new thing.
Yes. So.
So how would you like amend that? But I assume you'd have to add more words.
Or an extra page.
Just spacing, because so when you're typesetting by hand, you align everything to the left-hand margin, and then you pick your longest sentence, and then you line everything up with that. And you have something called kerning, which is the space between the letters. You can enlarge that, but don't go overboard, because otherwise you just end up with like a sentence that's just like a string of letters. But you can sort of adjust that just so it's not noticeable, but it helps fit the words.
Does it
on the
tend
page.
to? Can it sort of like be jump your lines around? You know, when you have a conversation in a book, they tend to like be one person's line and finished off with "they exclaimed," then the next person's line, then the next person line, then there might be a line of text and then the next person's spoken words, and your broken up format of a conversation can sort of like not realise that that's what's happening and just keep sticking in making them into longer sentences.
It usually so when I finished it, I usually put it into Word and then export that to whatever I'm doing. So it should. Well, Scribus doesn't keep any of the formatting. So if you've got anything in italics or bold, you've got to go back through the document and find those sections. It takes a while.
Yeah.
And sort of put those back into italics. With Kindle formatting, I would say it will keep the formatting that you have in Word. So if you've got a paragraph of text, what you can't see on like the Kindle Reader is because it uses HTML code, so basic computer coding, to say what the format of those paragraphs is. And if you import it straight from Word, each paragraph has a massive block of text that you can't see attached to it, saying, okay, this paragraph is in sort of Roman 11 point, with 8-point spacing between the lines.
Right,
and,
so you get all that extra information.
And that seriously increases the size of your books.
So what? Okay, for that person out there writing a book, what is your go-to platform that you actually write on?
I actually use a software called Scrivener.
So do you save not only to your device but to the cloud, just in case anything goes wrong?
So with Scrivener, you can use it over multiple platforms. So I have Scrivener on my computer, and that's linked to a cloud drive. And then, so I can close that down, make sure it's uploaded to the cloud, shut my computer down, grab my tablet, and sit downstairs and write. And when I open it up, it's all there. What's nice about Scrivener is it's got a little camera symbol that when you click it, it copies what you've done. So if you make changes and then say, actually, you prefer the original draft, you can roll it back.
Wow.
And the other nice thing about Scrivener is you write on cards. So they have a corkboard function. So you can set out your key scenes and shuffle. And you literally just click and drag and shuffle stuff around. And then if you click on it, it turns it into a document and you can write in that scene. So if you decide, actually, this scene works better in the beginning, rather than cut and paste, you just slide the page or pages to where you want them.
Right.
So it makes it easier for shuffling things around.
Brilliant. So our new writer who's listening now knows what best software to use. He knows all about the editing, prepping up for the cover. All this is in place. How do you physically get that physical book?
Okay, so with Kindle, so the digital version, it's easier because once it's all formatted, I self-publish through Amazon just because it's got quite a large audience, and it's actually one of the biggest sort of Kindle. There are other companies that do sort of e-pubs and sort of electronic books. So yeah, you literally just create an account. So it's the KDP that I publish through, which is Kindle Direct Publishing.
Right.
You literally click new book, type in your title, all your author details, upload the PDF and your cover art, and then hit publish.
And away you go.
And
Wow.
away you
Fantastic.
go. It's slightly more tricky with the paperbacks because the size of the cover depends on how many pages you've got.
Okay.
Ooh,
So
that's interesting.
So you need to decide what size book you want. Make sure it's all formatted. That includes all your front matter, so your copyrights, publishing information, the little blurb text that says all the characters are fictional and not based on real people, and so then you get your page count from that. They have a template on KDP where you tell them what size book you want, how many pages, and it'll give you a template for your cover art. Just make sure it fits on there nice and neat, and then again you just upload that all into KDP and publish, and then somebody goes, okay, I want the paperback, and it all gets printed out.
They print it out automatically for you.
Yes, but you can choose sort of styles. I mean, my books, they've got a matte cover, but you can have shiny covers, and there's, again, Amazon aren't the only ones that
So
do
if
it.
anybody wants any further advice, can they come to your website and send you
I'm more than happy to
send
answer
you an
questions.
email?
There's a sort of comments box on the website. Just drop me a question.
Super.
I'm
happy
certainly
to-
glad that I know you. Because I can send you a message.
That's it. Right. To round off, there's one question that's been in the back of my mind all through this podcast, and I've got to ask this. When writing a book, when do you find the title?
Sometimes I start with the title. Weft of Crimson, I actually got the title from the book.
Do you kind of like have a working title, or is it like you have that title, it's an inspiration, like I'm writing the book around that title, or I've written the book and it's that part, I like that, I'm going to take that and use it as a title?
I sort of do both. Sometimes I start with a title and go, okay, this is my working title. I might change it, and then it stays as it is.
Okay, so I'm going to take you to your first book, Bound. Did you think of the title before writing the book?
I didn't have a title for that one when I first started writing. Like I say, the first one took me 8 years to write, so it ended up a completely different story than what I started with. So, yeah.
Well, you are certainly dedicated. 8 years for your first book.
Yes.
Is it a world record?
Yes.
I'm not sure about that, but I mean, the others sort of took me sort of a couple of years, because while I was writing the first one,
Other ideas are coming to you.
Yeah.
I mean, the second book started because I couldn't fit everything I wanted to say in the first one, and then that kind of happened with the second one, and it just sort of snowballed. There's still storylines in there that I haven't tied off.
I really enjoy the creative process in that respect.
Yeah, so at some point I want to write an anthology of sort of short stories, sort of focusing on some of the minor characters and tying up some of the loose ends that I didn't quite tie up.
Last question I've got, just to finish off. When is it likely this vampire book's going to be available?
I'm about 40,000 words in the actual writing. I mean, I've written 90,000 words, but most of those have ended up in the trash bin. But I'm sort of, I am drawing sort of scenes from that back in. So I'm hoping probably by next year that should be available.
So give yourself a year.
Yes.
Year's grace.
Then you can come back in.
Yeah, we can come
do
back
another
in
podcast
and tell us all about this this new book.
But yeah, like I say, main thing, research. They say write what you know.
Right,
That doesn't mean if you're writing murder mysteries you go out and kill someone.
No. Sorry. I just took this advice from this podcast.
Yes, I was listening to Sarah Downing, and she said I needed to do some research.
I mean, there are books out there, and there's a series of books by an author called P.D. Lyle. He's a American doctor, MD. he writes murder mysteries. He has books on sort of forensics for fiction. And if you can't find your answer in any of his books, drop him an email and he gets back to you really quickly, because I've had used him for a couple of questions.
Oh, cool.
My first 4 books, because they've got sword fighting in there, I went out and learned proper broadsword fighting.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Wonder who that's got anything to do with.
Yes.
I have no idea.
But yeah, so I thought, research. And
Yay,
so great.
there we go. What a brilliant way to finish off this podcast.
Fantastic.
But yeah, there's lots of books on. I mean, I've got book Poisons for Authors, which tell you all the symptoms and the house when they kick in. And yeah, I'm surprised I'm not on a watch list somewhere because of my Google histories.
Superb. Well, thank you so much, Sarah, to come into the
It's
studio.
been fantastic learning all about this.
Yeah, it's very, very in depth,
Yeah.
and but very insightful.
Yes, I'm sure I could have talked for hours on this, but
Well, yeah, that's the thing. That's the
Well, we will be getting you back in,
Yeah, but any questions from any of your listeners, drop me a line.
and Zach will put the link in the
Description.
Yeah, I'll tell you what as well. I've got some promotional vouchers for my audiobook.
Ooh.
So if the first 5 listeners email me, say Zak Wylde Productions and the episode number, I'll send them a link for a free copy of the audiobook.
Wow, that is so exciting.
There you go, listeners. Be one of those first 5.
So before we leave, it's time to reach over to the hat of mystery, the Sherlock Holmes hat of topics.
I have the Deerstalker.
So this is
gonna-
to find out the next topic for an exclusive episode for our patrons and YouTube members.
Right now, Sarah, do you dare thrust your hand into the
Bitten by
Deerstalker?
Deerstalker hat.
That's it.
Okay,
Right.
let's find out the episode number. Let's see
Let's see if Zach
if
can
I can remember what it is.
what it is. Always testing you.
Flat Earth.
Ah,
Number 1.
number 1.
Okay, fan.
It had to come out at some
In
point.
every episode, somehow.
Somehow, there's usually a reference to the flat Earth theory.
Oh dear.
Oh, so we're going to have to come in and talk about any developments on the flat Earth.
Fun fact: it's flat. Apparently.
It's a fun fact. There's 8 other planets, or is it 7 these days? Other planets.
We'll talk about it in the episode.
We will.
So
They're all spherical.
that will be an exclusive episode available for our patrons and YouTube members.
I look forward to it.
If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe to this channel and comment below any suggestions of topics or activities you'd like to listen to in future episodes. That's a big bound goodbye from Zach.
That's a fictional goodbye from Buzz.
And it's a well-kerned goodbye from Sarah.
Goodbye.
You can find the Now We Know Show podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music and Apple Podcasts. Keep up to date with everything ZWP on Facebook and Instagram, or visit the Zak Wylde Productions website at www.zakwyldeproductions.com. And remember to join us on Patreon or become a YouTube member for early access content and exclusive episodes.